Performing Arts The Vanishing Room. Horror story. One cold, windy evening in late fall, Nadia received the phone call that would change her life. Her grandmother had passed away. Though grief weighed heavy on her chest, she couldn't ignore the bittersweet flood of memories that followed. She had spent so many days of her childhood in her grandmother's home, running through the garden, playing hide and seek in the hallways, falling asleep to the creak of the rocking chair downstairs. But no memory stood out more than the one door she was never allowed to open. At the far end of the upstairs hallway, past the bedrooms and the closet, was a single door. Old, with paint flaking like dry skin. Its brass knob was always cold, colder than the rest of the house. Her grandmother had warned her countless times. Never go into the locked room upstairs. That room is not for us. And it wasn't just her grandmother. Even her mother repeated the same words, once sternly grabbing Nadia's wrist as she wandered too close to the door. Do you hear me? That room stays closed. It is not meant for you. As a child, Nadia never understood. She used to wonder if maybe it was just a storage room filled with junk. But still, she swore she sometimes heard faint whispers from the other side. Once, she even saw the knob turn on its own. That door haunted her childhood, the one forbidden place in a house otherwise filled with warmth. Years later, when her grandmother's will was read, the house was left to her. But in the will, written carefully in her grandmother's shaky handwriting, was one last instruction. Do not enter the locked room. The warning had followed her from childhood into adulthood, a rule that seemed eternal. And yet, as Nadia walked into the silent, empty house that evening, her bags heavy in her hands, her eyes drifted, as if pulled, to the end of the upstairs hallway. The door was still there, waiting. And for the first time in her life, the thought came to her clearly. What if I opened it? For the first few nights, Nadia tried to settle in. She cleaned dust from the shelves, unpacked her things, and spent hours gaming on her laptop to drown out the quiet. But silence has a way of revealing things. One night, while she was playing, her screen flickered. At first, she thought it was lag. But then a message appeared in the in-game chat. Don't open the door. Her hands froze on the keyboard. She checked the player list. She was the only one online. The house was silent. Until the scratching began. At first it was faint, a slow, deliberate scraping, like nails against wood. It was coming from upstairs, from the direction of that room. She muted her laptop, listening closely. The sound stopped. She unmuted, and it started again, louder this time. And then, without her touching anything, her in-game character began to move. Slowly, walking upstairs. Her chest tightened. The whispers of her childhood warnings echoed louder in her head. Never go into the locked room. That room is not for us. Nadia grabbed her flashlight, her hands trembling. The stairs creaked beneath her as she climbed, each step heavier than the last. The door at the end of the hallway was slightly ajar. For the first time in her life. Her breath came in shallow bursts. She pushed it open. The air inside was icy, unnatural. A smell of damp paper and burnt wood filled her nose. The walls were covered in drawings. Charcoal sketches. Of her. Some from childhood, her playing in the garden, hiding under the table, clutching her grandmother's hand. Others from her teenage years. Others from last week. And then one from just hours ago. Sitting at her laptop, face lit by the screen. Her heart stopped when she noticed a detail in that drawing. Behind her, a tall, dark figure stood in the shadows. She spun around. Nothing was there. The door slammed shut. The temperature dropped. Her breath misted in the beam of her flashlight. The walls began to ripple, as if the drawings themselves were breathing. The paper shifted and crinkled, until one sketch peeled away and fell to the floor. But instead of landing flat, it began to rise, to stretch. And from the paper stepped a figure. It was her. But wrong. Its eyes were hollow, black voids. Its mouth stretched too wide into a smile that didn't belong on a human face. It whispered in a voice that was almost hers, but distorted, doubled, as if two people were speaking at once. "We've been waiting for you." Nadia tried to scream, but the sound caught in her throat. The doppelganger reached out, brushing its cold, inky fingers against her cheek. A smear of charcoal burned across her skin like a mark. The walls shuddered. More drawings began to stir. Faces of her, dozens of her, turning their hollow eyes toward her in unison. The door creaked open again, and Nadia bolted through it, desperate to escape. But when she stumbled out, she wasn't in the hallway anymore. She was inside the drawing of her grandmother's house. The world around her was flat, lifeless, colorless. The walls looked painted, and the air pressed against her skin like paper. All around her floated drawings, hundreds, thousands of versions of herself. Some smiling, some screaming, all watching her, whispering her name in a chorus that made her head spin. On the floor, a laptop flickered to life by itself. The screen showed her real room, her real desk, and her real body sitting at it. Except it wasn't moving. The figure at the desk, another her, stared blankly into the webcam, unblinking. The username above the game character on screen, Nadia_2. Her laptop emitted one final message across the chat. "You're the drawing now. I get to live." The whispers rose into a deafening roar as the screen shattered into static. Fade to black.